Hey, Flickin' Fanatics, it's your resident senior citizen, Pastor Dad Fox, Scott Fox here with my 2022 top 5. Now, before I get into my list, I just have to say, this year was a complete overload with the amount of content that was produced. With all the different streaming platforms, movies coming to theaters, plus the backlog from COVID for 2 years. This year, 2022, had so many movies and so much content, it was impossible to try and see it all. So, fortunately, between our entire group here at Flickin' Reel, we were able to cover a lot of material, but each one of us kind of has our own unique view on movies and TV shows and streaming service shows. And with that, we have covered a broad amount of content. I will say that I've probably seen the least of our entire group as far as movies and shows this year, but that's just the nature of the beast. I got to work multiple jobs, husband, father of 4 kids, lots on the plate. But the things I did see, there were some complete gems this year. This year was definitely one of those ones where what was produced took it to another level. And there's a lot of movies that came this year that I wasn't able to see that I'm still excited about seeing, even though they've come out. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump in with number 5 on my list. This is actually a Netflix movie, All Quiet on the Western Front. I'm a huge war movie buff, and I'm also a history buff. And All Quiet on the Western Front is a fantastic book in the first place, but then it has been remade multiple times, including an Academy Award-winning representation back in the 1930s. But this movie, this year on Netflix, was fantastic. That being said, I will say, if you watch it in German with subtitles. Best way to see the movie. You catch more of the emotion, even though you can't necessarily understand German, but it's beautifully done. And it is a very good movie that draws you in. And I think part of that is also a little bit of nostalgia. I am familiar with the story and I've read the book. And so the representation they put on the screen was incredibly well done and definitely worth the view. So number 5 on my list of movies for this year. Number 4 was the one I hinted at earlier, Top Gun Maverick. Oh, what a nostalgia fest. Being a kid from the 80s, Top Gun is kind of the movie that catapulted Tom Cruise from a household name into a superstar, and he never really came down off of that. Top Gun was an incredible action movie, and to be able to see him come back and reprise the role of Maverick, and not only reprise the role of Maverick, the story was fantastic. The connection between he and Goose then connected down into Maverick and Rooster, just so beautifully told. This movie was one that I'm disappointed I didn't get to see on the big screen, but I am grateful that I snuck it in and was able to see it because it easily made the list this year. Fantastic movie. And it's not that any given day, I probably could have slipped this all the way up to number 1, but number 1 holds a little bit of a special place. Number 3 on the list was actually fairly early in the year, but it seemed to have held up. And I'll be honest, when I went through the list of all the movies that came out this year, I was surprised I had forgotten about it. And immediately, as soon as I looked at it, it kicked right in. And I think it's one of the top grossing movies of the entire year. That's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I remember going to the theater, and I'm a huge Evil Dead and Sam Raimi fan. This movie was as though Sam Raimi made a superhero Evil Dead movie. So well told, so scary, special effects were great, the story was solid. We got to see a lot of cool aspects of being within the multiverse. This movie was one that you did need to know a lot of the Marvel backstory in order to really understand the entire thing, and you really needed to have seen WandaVision. But with all that, still an excellent movie. It was one of the ones where I walked out of the theater and was like, man, that was, again, grateful I went to the theater, got to see it, got to experience it in all its glory, but it was just awesome. It was a really, really good, it was the closest that Marvel has come to making a horror movie in the MCU, and it was really well done. Now we're into my top 2. Whew. These two could have gone back and forth. Matter of fact, I rewrote this list about 10 times in order to figure out exactly which one I wanted as my top for the year, but I feel confident in my positioning. Number 2 on the list was Amazon Prime's Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. I am a hardcore J.R.R. Tolkien fan. I've read and listened to all the audiobooks and read them of the Silmarillion, Lord of the Rings trilogy, The Hobbit, Unfinished Stories of Middle-earth. There are so much amazing material out there. And this show caused a lot of controversy because they kind of created something within their own, and that stirred the pot. but the show came together in the final 2 episodes. It was really good. Some standout actors throughout the entire show. Ismael Cruz Cordova, phenomenal as a Rondir, really was kind of a standout of the show. But overall, the story really came together strongly right at the very end. I know that will upset some people. Other people will be right on board with me. But to be honest, it's my list, so Rings of Power. It really, really is good. And if you're worried about it, the great thing is they have promised season 2. And season 2, they are building on stories specifically written by Tolkien. The problem was to bridge the gap. That was in a window of time when Tolkien wrote the least for the longest window of time. There was stories about what happened, but there wasn't detailed stories. There was more of an overview, like a 50,000 foot view of the stories instead of a detailed, these are the things that happened. The show did a really good job of character development, of bringing you along. And as a hardcore Tolkien guy, I can appreciate the liberties they took within the show to develop a story when there really wasn't one. And the things that they did and the they built, bonds that they made between them were really powerfully done. Of shows and streaming, it is my number 1 for the year. However, so that brings us to our honorable mentions for this year. And right with that is Willow, Thor Love and Thunder, Return to Space, and then Ancient Apocalypse were kind of my honorable mentions. Shows I really was intrigued by and enjoyed, and some good movies. But that brings us to our number 1. There were so many good movies this year. It was hard to pick, and I think this was made easier by the fact that I didn't get to see a lot of the other movies that most people are considering for number 1. But I tell you what, even if I had, they'd have been hard pressed to beat this one. The Batman with Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne and Batman was easily my number 1 for the year. This, in my opinion, is now above Batman 89 with Michael Keaton as the best standalone Batman movie ever made. Absolutely incredible. I walked out of the theater going, that's the level of a Batman movie we should have always had. I loved Ben Affleck, and I thought Ben Affleck was close to Michael Keaton as far as the best Batman ever. Robert Pattinson did such an excellent job. I don't know if Robert Pattinson's necessarily going to be the greatest Batman ever, but man, he did an excellent job. But that movie as a whole, the ensemble cast, John Turturro, Colin Farrell, Zoe Kravitz, just jam-packed full of outstanding actors, all bringing their best to that movie. The story was phenomenal. The action was incredible. I walked out of that thinking this is the closest thing I've seen to a 10 out of 10 in a long time. And so that movie, The Batman, is my number 1 for the year 2022, hands down. And I'll be honest, it wasn't even close. I liked a lot of stuff, but nothing was as good as The Batman. Again, that was a fantastic year. 2022 had a ton of good stuff. It's impossible to see it all. What'd you guys think? What were your favorites? What did you like the most? Leave comments, like, subscribe. Let us know. Let me know what I need to go catch back up on. There's a lot of movies out there. Some of them I intend to go catch and see. Some of them probably are just going to go by the wayside. But I am looking forward to 2023 and all the things that are coming down the pipe. Have a great night.